Industries that are hot, sectors set to outperform the market. That's what's here in Zacks Industry Rank Analysis. Let's take a check on the Rotblatt radar this week and see what industry or where Mr. Rotblatt's eyes are. Charles Rotblatt is with me once again. He's our senior market analyst at Zacks.com. You're really not looking at an industry this time. You're looking at the auto dealers in light of the Cash for Clunkers program. But is that a separate?
There's actually an industry group with the auto dealers in there.
Really?
So, yes.
Okay, then I stand corrected. Because when you think autos, you think automakers.
Right, but there's also publicly traded auto dealers. You have Asbury Group, you have Penske Group, who might actually become an auto manufacturer if they actually close the deal on Saturn. But then you also have used car companies like CarMax out there. You have Sonic Automotive. So there's a lot of these people. Traditionally think of the car dealers as a local guy,
right.
But even like in Houston, Sterling McDavid, a big auto dealer up there. Sterling McCall out there. McDavid's also another big auto dealer in Texas, but Sterling McCall is actually owned by a publicly traded company. So a lot of these family name auto dealers are actually part of big conglomerates. You still have the small, quote unquote, mom and pop auto dealers, but a lot of these auto dealers are now part of a bigger corporation, even though they might have a name like Sterling McCall, which suggests that there's actually a Sterling and a McCall still operating the dealership.
All right, well, I stand corrected then. You learn something every day here, Never too old to learn. So in light of this Cash for Clunkers program and your look at the auto dealers, it's a good picture, is what you're saying?
Well, I think it's a mixed picture. Definitely the car dealers actually benefited from Cash for Clunkers across the board. In fact, even CarMax said recently, even though they're a used car dealer, they said they had good traffic when the program was going on. The question is, are we now seeing a hangover as a result of the Cash for Clunkers program? And there's some evidence that says, yes, we are. Particularly Edmunds is talking about used car sales, and they're saying this is going to be the worst September in a very, very long time. An analyst with them, actually a statistician with them, said sales are running at about 8.8 million units. Put in perspective, last year they were running about 12.5. When we started seeing the credit crunch tighten, they were running at 12.5 million. And historically, it's been over 16 million. They said it's been over 16 million for years. So we're really seeing, especially in September, a big drop-off. And if you look at a lot of local news articles throughout the country, you're seeing a lot of car dealers talking about cars sitting on lots, people aren't coming in. At the same time, you do hear stories about GM ramping up production in 24 hours at some factories to try and get their 2000 lineup out there. But I think, it definitely took sales away, not only from September, but the big question is, how many sales from October, November, December, going into 2010 did Cash for Clunkers take away? At this point, we don't know, but it's definitely a potential problem for these auto dealers, and really even for the new car makers.
Well, what I'm hearing from having talked with people who represent auto dealerships personally is that while it did raise traffic, no question about that, it put the dealerships in a bit of a bad position because they're not really getting paid for the cars that they sold on a timely basis. And so now they have no inventory to sell and no money to buy new inventory with, even if customers do come in the door.
Yeah, there was a lag, and the government's actually working through, and I heard actually that most dealers are now actually getting paid. One curious thing that's happening that's kind of going unreported, we are seeing some clunkers actually end up back on the road. What's happening if a dealer actually took a car that did not qualify, the government decided it didn't qualify. This always happens anytime you have a bureaucratic program as big as Cash for Clunkers.
Right.
The dealer's left with the car. And so I'm actually hearing some stories where the dealers are actually calling up the car buyers and saying, you need to make up this difference in cash. So we have a little bit of that going on there, but by and large, it actually took a lot of cars and trucks off the road. And the flip side of all this is that now we're seeing even a tighter supply of used cars. Prior to Cash for Clunkers, there was a growing in supply, or really a better word, a growing shortage of used cars. We were seeing inventory levels drop. Now we just took a whole bunch of vehicles, and really vehicles are probably more affordable to a lot of people, off the road. So that's actually keeping used car prices higher. Now, if you're a company like CarMax, that's beneficial because they actually saw very high margins on their used car prices. However, if you're a new car dealer, the problem is when someone goes to trade in their car, you're actually looking at at actually offering them a higher trade-in value, which could hurt your margins. Now, the offset of all this, when you look at some of the most popular cars that were traded over the past few years, such as the Toyota Camry and the Honda Accord, those cars do not qualify for cash for clunkers. So you do have those family-sized sedans that are sitting out there that, you know, it's kind of a big unknown what's going to happen with those. So somebody's been trying to make those cars go, but they're getting near the end of their useful life. How does that all play in a role? How does that actually play a role in all this? The answer is we don't know. But certainly, right now, we are seeing a hangover in terms of cash for clunkers. Now, how long that hangover lasts and whether it requires 2 or 4 or 5 aspirin, we don't know. But it's definitely a concern. And I think if people are looking at some of these new car dealers or even some of the car makers and looking at the run thinking, you know, the economy's turning around, I'm going to actually get into the start buying car stocks, I think they need to take a step back and take a second look. And I really think the better play right now is probably on the used car side than it is on the new car side, simply because the higher used car prices will probably favor the used car dealerships. And even when we look at earnings estimates, as I discussed in this week's piece, we're actually seeing the earnings estimates, the trend being more favorable for the used car dealerships than they are for the new car dealerships.
And that's probably the bottom line when it comes to this story. And you can access a text version of this week's industry rank analysis that Charles referred to on Zacks.com's homepage if you are looking at this video from outside of the homepage. And if you're at the homepage already, take your time and read the article, because there's a lot of interesting detail here that we just didn't have time to bring up in this discussion. With Charles Rotblatt, I'm Terry Ruffalo.